Hello, everybody. In today's podcast, we are going to present one topic that has been discussed by the great Imam Al-Ghazali in his book, The Beginning of Guidance, Bidayat al-Hidayah. This is a book that I just finished studying these days, and I have to say that I really enjoyed the way he explains so clearly and easy what should be the perfect day in the life of a Muslim believer from the moment that you wake up until the time that you go to sleep. And I would like to bring some of the quotes that he presents us in his book so you will enjoy and benefit from the teachings of Imam Al-Ghazali presented in his book, The Beginning of Guidance. And as I said, this is a book that helps the believer to become even more pious in his worship, in his devotion, in his service to God. I will only interrupt the reading just to clarify some terms that might be not clear for whoever is listening. And without further delay, I will just start quoting from the book after he explains, of course, the importance of doing the purification in the morning, the ablutions, and all that. Then he explains the following about going to the mosque. He says like this: when you have completed your purification, pray in your house the 2 rak'ahs of the dawn worship, should the dawn have already broken. This was what the Messenger of God, God bless and preserve him, used to do. Then betake yourself to the mosque. Do not omit public worship, especially in the morning. Public worship is 17 times better than private worship. If you are easygoing about spiritual gain of this kind, what benefit will you have in seeking knowledge? The fruit of knowledge is only in the activity based on it. Then he continues on explaining where he says, when you walk to the mosque, walk easily and calmly and do not hurry. And then he continues to explain regarding worship, and he says the following about how to allot your time from the morning between worship and the rising of the sun. He says the following: your time between the worship and the rising of the sun should be allotted to 4 tasks. Number A, private prayer. B, acts of meditation and adoration repeated with a tasbih or subha. The reading of the Quran. D, reflection. He says, reflect upon your own sins, misdeeds, and shortcomings in the service of your master, and how you have exposed yourself to his painful punishment and great wrath. Order your time, arranging your occupations for the whole day, so that thereby you may become aware of shortcomings that you had overlooked. Beware of exposing yourself during that day to the dire wrath of God. Make the intention of doing good towards all Muslims, and resolve that throughout the day you will occupy yourself only with obeying God Most High. Go over in your heart all the different acts of obedience within your power. Choose the noblest of them, and consider how to prepare the causes of it, so that you may be occupied with it. Do not omit reflection on the approach of your appointed term and the coming of death, which cuts short all worldly hopes, so that matters pass from the sphere of choice, leaving only sighing and regret and long drawn out delusion. He then explains about the time from sunrise to the afternoon. What should be the ideal then, or how should the individual organize his time? He says the following: when the sun has risen, and is a spear's length up. Perform 2 rak'ahs in of the worship, that is, at the end of the period disapproved for worship. For worship is disapproved between the time of the obligatory morning worship and the time when the sun is up. I would like to make a parenthesis here and explain that, as you notice, sometimes he goes back and forth, meaning we are going now again um, explaining things that should be done from the time that you wake up, and this should be done from the moment you are at home. We just explained that he was even saying when you go to the mosque and everything, but then he goes back again and then he continues to expand on that topic. So he says the following. He continues, then, when the sun is high and about a quarter of the day has elapsed, perform the forenoon worship, 4, 6, or 8 rak'ahs in pairs. All these numbers have been handed down on the authority of the Messenger of God, God bless and preserve him, with the remark that this worship is the best of all. If a man wants, let him perform a large number of rak'ahs, and if he wants, let him perform a small number. Between sunrise and the time when the sun begins to decline, there is no religious obligation apart from these acts of worship. The time that is left over from them you can spend in 4 ways. The first and best way is to devote this time to seeking really useful knowledge, as distinct from the superfluities with which people busy themselves and which they call knowledge. A really useful knowledge is that which makes you grow in the fear of God, in awareness of your own faults, and in knowledge of the service of your Lord. It decreases your desire for this world and increases your desire for the life to come. It opens your eyes to the defects in your conduct so that you guard against them. It makes you aware of the wiles and deceptions of the devil and how he imposes on evil intellectuals, meaning the ulama. He's saying, and I would like to repeat this again, that this kind of knowledge makes you aware of the wiles and deception of the devil and how he imposes on evil intellectuals, meaning the ulama, until he exposes them to the hate and wrath of God Most High, in that they buy this world at the price of religion and make their knowledge a means of gaining wealth from the powers that be, and of eating up unjustly the wealth of trust endowments for the poor and orphans. All their thoughts throughout the day are directed to the quest of worldly influence and a place in the heart of men, and that forces them to hypocrisy, to quarrelsomeness, to disputatiousness in matters of theology and metaphysics, to boastfulness. Imam Al-Ghazali then continues with the following. On the other hand, our conception of useful knowledge is that we have already expounded in the book The Revival of the Religious Sciences. If you accept this conception, study it and practice it, then teach it and preach it. When a man knows these things and practices them, that man shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven, according to the witness of Jesus, peace be upon him. When you have completed that, and have also completed the reform of yourself outwardly and inwardly, and you still have some time free, there is no harm in spending it in the study of the different legal rights, so as to know the less common details with regard to the acts of the service to God, and the method of mediation between men when the following of their passions leads them into quarrels. That too is included in the non-universal duties once these important duties have been carried out. If, however, because of its occupation with such studies, your soul calls upon you to abandon the acts of meditation and reading of the Quran described above, you may be sure that the accursed devil has secretly infected your heart with a latent disease, the love of influence and wealth. Do not let yourself be deceived by that and become a laughing stock for the devil, who will bring you to destruction and then scoff at you. But if you test your soul for a time with acts of scripture reading and devotion without, through sloth, finding them burdensome, and if rather it is clear that you long to attain to really useful knowledge and desire only the countenance of God Most High and the mansion of the life to come, then that is better than supererogatory acts of devotion, provided the intention is sound. The important thing is soundness of intention. If the intention is not sound, it becomes the point where fools are deceived and men's feet sleep. The second way is where you are incapable of attaining to really useful knowledge, but devote yourself to serving God by such activities as meditation, scripture reading, adoration, and public worship. This is the level of those who are fervent and alive of good life. This is the level of those who are fervent and live a good life. By this second way, also you will be useful, you will be successful. That is, you will find salvation. The third way is to busy yourself with activities which benefit your fellow Muslims and fill the hearts of believers with happiness, of which make it easier for good men to do good works. For example, serving the professors of God's law and the mystics and ministers of religion, and going about their errands, and exerting oneself in feeding the poor and unfortunate, and going about, for example, visiting the sick and escorting funerals. All that is more excellent than supererogatory acts of worship, for these are acts of serving God which at the same time show kindness towards Muslims. The fourth way that you should spend your time, where you are incapable of the previous one, is to busy yourself with acquiring the necessities of life for yourself or for your family in such a way that no Muslim suffers any harm from you nor has anything to fear from your tongue or your hand, and that your religion is upheld by your not committing any sin. If you live thus, you will reach the level of the people of God's right hand, even though you have failed to rise to the levels just described. This is the lowest level of those which are included in religion. Anything below this belonging to the fields of the devils. Therefore you should busy yourself with such things, for in God is your refuge from what destroys your religion or injures one of God's servants. This, destroying one's religion and harming the servants of God, is the great of those who perish. So beware of belonging to this group. In respect of his religion, a man stands in one of three classes. A. He may be safe or saved, namely, when he confines himself to performing the duties of strict obligation and avoiding sins. Or B. He may be above standard, literally, making a profit, namely, when of his own will he makes an offering and performs supererogatory acts. Or C. He may be below standard, literally incurring a loss, namely, when he falls short of what is incumbent upon him. If you cannot be above standard, at least endeavor to be safe, and beware, oh beware, of being below standard. In respect of other men, too, a man stands in one of three classes. A. With regard to them, he might take the place of just and generous angels, namely, by exerting himself for their ends through compassion and the desire to fill their hearts with gladness. Or B. With regard to other men, he might occupy the position of animals and inanimate objects, namely, where they receive neither benefit nor harm from him. Or C. With regard to them, he might occupy the position of scorpions, snakes, and harmful beasts of prey, from which men expect no good, while fearing the evil they may cause. If you cannot reach the sphere of the angels, at least try not to fall from the level of animals and inanimate things to the ranks of scorpions, snakes, and beasts of prey. If your soul is content to come down from the highest heights, at least do not let it be content to be hurled into the lowest depths. Perhaps you will be safe by the middle way, where you have neither more nor less than what suffices. Throughout the day, you must not busy yourself except with matters which will benefit you in the next life or sustain you in this, matters which are indispensable and whose aid is indispensable in the next life or in this. If in intercourse with your fellow men you are unable to maintain your religion, perform your religious duties, and attain salvation, then solitude is preferable for you, so you must take to it, and find in it salvation and peace. If in solitude evil suggestions draw you away to what displeases God, and you cannot subdue them by devotional practices, then you must sleep. That is the best state for you and for all of us. If we are unable to gain any spoils of battle, we at least save ourselves by flight. But how mean is the state of the man who saves his religion by making his life empty. For sleep is brother of death. It is the emptying of life and assimilation to inanimate things. Preparation for the other acts of worship. You must prepare before the sun begins to decline for the noon worship. If you rose at night for prayers, or were awake for some good purpose, then take your siesta before midday. It is an aid to night rising, just as a meal immediately before sunrise is an aid to fasting from sunrise to sunset. On the other hand, a siesta when you are not rising at night is like a daybreak meal when you are not fasting by day. Endeavor to wake up before the sun begins to decline, perform the ablutions, go to the mosque, say the prayer of greeting of the mosque, and await the muezzin and make the responses to him. Then stand up and perform the 4 rak'ahs following on sun decline. The Messenger of God, God bless and preserve him, used to protract this worship and to say, "At this time the gates of heaven are open, and I like to have a good work rise to God's throne for me at this time." These 4 rak'ahs before the noon worship are a confirmed usage, sunnah muakkada. According to a tradition, however, perform according to a tradition, whoever performs them and makes the bowing and prostrating well is accompanied in his worship by 70,000 angels, who continue to ask pardon for him until night. Then perform the obligatory noon worship along with the Imam, and after that performs 2 rakats, for that belongs to the fixed and established worships. From now until late afternoon, occupy yourself only with learning, or studying, or the succoring of a Muslim, or the reading of the Quran, or exert yourself in procuring such necessities of life as will be of assistance to you in your religion. Then perform 4 rak'ahs before late afternoon worship. That is a confirmed usage. The Messenger of God, God bless and preserve him, has said, "May God have mercy on a man who performs 4 rak'ahs before the late afternoon worship. So make an effort to receive what he, God bless and preserve him, prayed for. After the late afternoon worship, let your occupation After the late afternoon worship, let your occupation be similar to those before it. You must not be slack in the ordering of your time, doing at any moment whatever chances to present itself as it presents itself. Rather, you must keep a strict reckoning with yourself and regulate your occupations and activities throughout the night and day, having something fixed to occupy every hour, and neither doing anything outside its fixed time nor doing anything else in that time. In this way, the blessing on your time will be evident. If, however, you are heedless and neglect yourself as the animals do, you will not know what to do each hour, so that most of your time will be used up fruitlessly and your life will have slipped from you. For your life is your capital or the basis of your trading. By it you may attain to the joy of the eternal mansion where God Most High is near. Every breath you draw is a jewel of inestimable worth, which nothing can replace. Once it has passed, it cannot come back. Do not be like the poor deluded fools who delight every day at the increase of their wealth and the decrease of their days. What good is there in increase in wealth while life is decreasing? Delight only in the increase of knowledge and of good works, for these are friends who will continue to be with you in the tomb when your family and your wealth, your children and your comrades are all left behind. When the sun becomes yellow, try, before it actually sets, to return to the mosque. Busy yourself with adoration and confession of sin, literally, prayer for pardon. For this, like the period after sunrise, is an excellent time. God Most High has said, "Adore and praise your Lord before the rising of the sun and before its sunset." Quran 20:130. Before the sun sets, recite the verses, "By the sun and his morning brightness, by the night when it veils him." Quran 91 verses 1 through 4. And then the 2 surahs of taking refuge, 113 and Surah 114. Do not let the sun set while you are still engaged in confession. When you hear the call to worship, make the responses, saying after the muezzin, "O God, at the approach of thy night and the withdrawal of thy day, at the assembling of thy worshippers and the voice of thy suppliants, I beseech thee to grant Muhammad a place of favor and merit and an exalted degree, and to raise him to the noble station which thou hast promised him, for thou art no unfaithful to thy promise and the petition as before." Then perform the obligatory sunset worship after the responses to the muezzin and the institution. After that, perform the 2 rak'ahs before speaking, as that is the fixed arrangement at the sunset worship. If you perform a further 4 rak'ahs, that is also a usage. If you are able, make the intention of remaining in the mosque in retreat until nightfall, and spend the time between sunset and nightfall in worship. Much has come to us, in Quran and tradition, about the inestimable merit of such a practice. This worship is the Nashiah, or beginning of the night, since it is the first in occurrence. This is the worship of the contrite. The messenger of God, God bless and preserve him, was asked about the word of the Most High. They withdraw themselves from their couches. He said, "This is the worship between sunset and nightfall. It removes all idle words of the beginning and ending of the day. When nightfall comes, perform 4 rak'ahs before the obligatory worship, thus filling the time between the 2 calls to worship, the call to worship proper and the institution. There is great merit in this. A tradition runs, prayer between the call to worship and the institution will not be unheard. Then perform the obligatory evening worship, and after it 2 rak'ahs of the fixed arrangement. In the course of the later recite the surah of the prostration, surah 32, and blessed is he, surah 25 verse 1 to 2, and or surah 36, and the surah of smoke, surah 44. That was the practice of the messenger of God according to tradition. After that, perform 4 rak'ahs. A tradition indicates that this has great merit. Following on that, perform the odd worship, 3 rak'ahs with either 2 salutations or 1. The messenger of God, God bless and preserve him, used to recite in these 2 extra worships the surah, glorify the name of thy Lord and the Most High, meaning surah 87, and say, O ye believer, which is surah 109, and the surah of purity, surah 112, and the 2 surahs of taking refuge, surah 113 and surah 114. If you have decided to be up at night for prayer, postpone the odd worship so that the odd may be your last act of worship for the night. Then devote yourself to intellectual discourse or the reading of a book. Do not give yourself up to light amusement. Let these pursuits just mentioned be your closing activities before going to sleep, for activities are judged by the closing ones. Regarding going to sleep, Imam Al-Ghazali says, when you want to go to sleep, lay out your bed pointing to Mecca, and sleep on your right side, the side on which the corpse reclines in the tomb. Sleep is the similitude of death, and waking of the resurrection. Perhaps God Most High will take your spirit this night, so be prepared to meet Him by being in a condition of purity when you sleep. Have your will written and beneath your head. Repent of your faults, seek pardon, resolve not to return to your sin, and so sleep. Resolve to do good to all Muslims if God Most High rises you up again. Remember that in like manner you will lie in the tomb, completely alone. Only your works will be with you. Only the effort you have made will be rewarded. Do not try to induce sleep by laboriously seeing that your bed is soft and smooth, for sleep is the rejection of life, except when to be awake is unwholesome for you. In that case, sleep preserves your religion. Night and day are 24 hours. The amount of sleep you take altogether by night or day should not be more than 8 hours. It is enough, supposing you live for 60 years, that you lose 20 of these years or a third of your life. As you go to bed, make ready your toothstick and washing things, and resolve to get up during the night for prayer, or else to get up before dawn. 2 rakas in the middle of the night is one of the treasures of the righteous man. Try to multiply your treasures against the day of your poverty. The treasures of this world will be of no use to you when you are dead. As you go to sleep, say, In thy name, Lord, I lay me down, and thy name I will rise up. Forgive my sins, O God. Keep me from thy punishment in the day when thou raisest thy servants. And then Imam Al-Ghazali points some kind of prayer for the individual to recite when he is going to sleep. And he continues, I'm trying to shorten the readings. He then advises to recite the throne of the verse, which is in the Quran, Surah number 2, 256, and 285 from Surah number 2 also, the end of the Surah of Purity, which is Surah 112, the two Surahs of Taking Refuge, which is 113 and Surah 114, and the Surah 67. And then he says the following: Let sleep come upon you while you are recollecting the name of God and are in purity. Whoever does this lifts up his spirit to the throne, and he is written down as praying until he wakes up. When you wake up, return to what I told you first of all, and continue in this routine for the rest of your life. If continuing thus is burdensome to you, be patient in the same way as a sick man is patient as the bitterness of sickness, since he looks forward to being well again. Reflect upon the shortness of your life. If you were to live, for example, to be 100, even that would be little compared with your residence in the mansion of the world to come, which is to all eternity. Consider how in the quest for this world you endure hardship and humiliation for a month or a year, since you hope that thereby you will have rest for 20 years, for example. How then do you not endure these things for a few days in the hope of having rest to all eternity? Do not cherish long hopes which lay heavy labor upon you, but suppose that death is near, and say to yourself, I shall endure the hardship today, perhaps I shall die tonight, and I shall be patient tonight, perhaps I shall die tomorrow. For death does not come upon us at a specific time, or in a specified way, or at a specified age, but come upon us he does. And so preparation for death is better than preparation for this world. You know that you remain here for only a brief space. Perhaps there remains but a single day of your allotted span, perhaps but a single breath. Imagine this in your heart every day, and impose upon yourself patience in obeying God daily. If, with the supposition that you have 50 years to live, you lay upon your soul the obligation of patience in obeying God Most High, your soul will break away and be difficult to handle. If you do what I suggest, you will rejoice at death unceasingly. But if you put off and are easy-going, death will come to you when you do not reckon on it, and you will sigh unceasingly. When morning comes and the night journey is over, people praise night travel. When death comes, you learn the outcome. Ye shall surely know the report of it after a while. We have now given you guidance in the arrangement of the periods of your day, and turn to the manner and rules of the worship and the fast, and the rules for the leader in the worship, for the rest of the congregation, and for the Friday assembly. So here Al-Ghazali ends his explanation about how should be the day, a day in the life of a Muslim. Um, I know it's a little bit long. I just try to share with you this knowledge for those who haven't read the book or don't have access to this book. I think it's a very, very good book, not only for Muslims, even for people who are not Muslims, for scholars, for academics. It's an excellent book because it provides a pious method, a way of living. And if you have noticed, some of the things that Al-Ghazali points in the book, some things might sound a little bit strange and not according to what most people do. And this is the case, of course, because this book is designed especially for those who want to go extra, who want to do what is beyond requirement in Islam. Meaning this is for the pious individual. Of course, the book is for everybody and is um, intended for at least the regular Muslim to try to, like Al-Ghazali says, be standard. If you cannot be above, try at least to be standard. Not below, but try at least to be safe, in the middle way. Try to do at least what is demanded from you. But also in the book, he encourages certain practices that, of course, are designed to lead the individual to purify himself to such an extent to reach to the highest levels. That's why you will notice that Al-Ghazali sometimes recommends doing more and certain different numbers of rakas in worship and more or less according to the individual, etc. Because again, he is trying to encourage the believer to go up to the highest degree, which he compares it with the degree of the angels. And I think it's an excellent book. Perhaps in future podcasts we will quote from another parts of the book, perhaps regarding fasting and Friday prayer, perhaps. We have to say that the books and the teachings of Imam Al-Ghazali are indeed a valuable treasure for whoever studies this book. And I emphasize again, not only for the Muslims, for anyone, any believer from any religion who wants to discipline his soul will find encouragement in the books of Imam Al-Ghazali, a lot of knowledge and a lot of encouragement and material that will be enable him or her to reach to the highest levels in worship, in the devotion to God. As always, I want to thank you so much for listening to this podcast. You're very welcome to share this material and to subscribe to the channel. If you have any comments, questions, you're welcome to comment below. Thank you so much, and we'll see each other in the next podcast.